My name is Dakota Ashford, and I'm 29 years old. Get out! I'm done paying for another man's mistake, my father said, throwing a $50 bill at my face on my 18th birthday, with my grandmother, my brother, and 6 relatives watching from the kitchen table. 11 years. That's how long I carried a sealed envelope with me. Through nursing school, through 12-hour shifts in the pediatric ward, through every Thanksgiving I spent alone. Inside was one piece of paper that could have ended everything. I never opened it in front of him, not because I was afraid, because I was waiting for the moment he couldn't look away. That moment came 6 months ago, at his 60th birthday party, in front of 80 guests, and when he finally saw what was inside, and who was standing at the door, his face turned a shade of gray I'd never seen on a living person. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. I love knowing where you're all listening from. Now let me take you back to a Saturday morning in April, the day my mother's brother showed up with a duffel bag and said 2 words that changed my life. My mother, Marlene, was the only reason our house ever felt like a home. She had this way of standing between me and my father without making it look like she was standing between me and my father. A hand on my shoulder when his voice got sharp, a change of subject when his eyes went cold. She was a buffer, soft, constant, invisible, until you realized she was gone. She died of ovarian cancer when I was 10. The doctors gave her 6 months. She lasted 14, because that's the kind of woman she was. She fought for every extra Tuesday with us. Before she got sick, my father was already distant with me. He'd ruffle Tyler's hair at the dinner table, ask about his little league games, carry him on his shoulders at the county fair. With me, it was different. Not violent, not loud, just empty. Like I was a tenant instead of a daughter. But he kept the mask on while she was alive. The week after her funeral, the mask came off. I remember the first time I heard him say it. He was on the phone with his brother, standing in the kitchen. He didn't know I was sitting on the stairs. She doesn't look like anyone in this family, Frank. Never has. I was 10. I didn't fully understand what he meant, but I understood the tone. It was the tone of someone washing their hands. After that, it was small things at first. Tyler got new school clothes in August. I wore what the church donation bin had. Tyler got the bigger bedroom. I got moved to the room above the garage, where the heating vent didn't work right. Nana, my grandmother, would visit on Sundays. She'd slip a $20 bill into my jacket pocket when no one was looking and squeeze my hand too tight, like she was trying to say something with her fingers that she couldn't say with her mouth. It took me 20 years to understand what she was trying to tell me. By 14, the gap between Tyler and me wasn't a gap anymore. It was a canyon. Tyler got a brand new mountain bike for his 12th birthday. Red, 21 gears, a helmet to match. I asked my father for $40 to buy a used biology textbook. He didn't even look up from the television. "Ask your real father," he said. Tyler looked at me from across the room. He was 12, and even he knew that sentence was wrong. But he didn't say anything. He never did. I got a job washing dishes at Rosario's, the Italian place 3 blocks from our house. I was 15. The owner, Mrs. DeLuca, paid me $7 an hour under the table and let me eat leftover pasta after closing. That was my dinner most nights. Tyler went to soccer camp that summer. 2 weeks upstate, $400. My father drove him there himself, loaded the car with new cleats and a sleeping bag from Dick's Sporting Goods. I stayed home. I worked doubles at Rosario's. I bought my own school supplies. The thing about being the invisible child is that you learn to build a life out of scraps. You learn that nobody is coming to save you. You learn that silence is not peace. It's just the sound of everyone agreeing you don't matter. Nana still came on Sundays, still slipped me money. But now when she looked at me, her eyes had something else in them, something heavier than pity. It looked like guilt. She'd hold my face in both hands and whisper, "You're a good girl, Dakota. Don't you ever forget that." I didn't understand then why she said it like an apology, like she owed me something she couldn't give. I understand now. The day I turned 18, I baked my own cake. Funfetti, from a box. I'd bought it with tip money and made it after my shift at Rosario's. I set it on the kitchen counter, stuck a single candle in the center, and lit it with a match from the junk drawer. I wasn't expecting a party. I wasn't expecting anything. I just wanted to blow out one candle in my own house before I wasn't allowed to anymore. My father walked in through the back door. Work boots, Carhartt jacket, sawdust in his hair. He saw the cake. He saw the candle. He saw me standing there, alone, in the kitchen at 6:15 p.m. on my birthday. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a $50 bill, tossed it onto the counter like he was tipping a valet. "Happy birthday! Get out! I'm done paying for another man's mistake." Nana was on the sofa in the next room. I heard the creak of the cushion as she leaned forward, and then nothing. She didn't stand up. She didn't speak. Tyler was on the stairs. I saw his hand tighten on the railing. His mouth opened, then closed. Nobody said a word. I picked up the 50, folded it twice, put it in my back pocket, blew out the candle, and called Uncle Ray from the phone in the hallway. He showed up 40 minutes later in his blue Ford pickup, engine idling in the driveway. I walked out with one garbage bag of clothes and a pair of shoes that didn't fit right. I didn't look back. But I made a promise to myself on that porch. One day, he would know exactly what he threw away, and it would be too late. Uncle Ray lived above his auto repair shop on Kellner Road, a 2-bedroom apartment with water stains on the ceiling and a kitchen so small you had to turn sideways to open the fridge. He'd cleared out his storage closet before I got there. Put in a twin mattress, a desk lamp, and a folded quilt that smelled like motor oil and laundry detergent. It wasn't much. It was everything. "You're home now," he said, standing in the doorway. "That's all that matters." Ray was my mother's younger brother. He'd served 8 years in the Army, 2 tours overseas, and came back quieter than he left. He opened the shop with his separation pay, fixed cars 6 days a week, and lived alone. He never married, never talked about why. He didn't ask me what happened at the house. He didn't ask about Gary. He just pointed to the bathroom towels and told me breakfast was at 7. The first week, I barely talked. I went to school, came back, sat at the desk in my closet room and did homework until my eyes blurred. Ray left plates of food outside my door, grilled cheese, canned soup, once a whole rotisserie chicken he must have bought at the grocery store on the way home. On the 8th night, I came out and sat at the kitchen table while he ate. He looked up, nodded, went back to his sandwich. That was it. That was the whole conversation. But something in my chest unlocked. Just a little. I didn't know this then, but Ray had his own battles. I found the chip in his nightstand drawer a month later, a bronze medallion with a triangle stamped into it. 3 years sober. He'd quit drinking the year my mother died. He never told me. I never asked. He just showed up, every single day. Leaving my father's house didn't set me free. It just moved the cage. Because Gary Ashford didn't stop at the front door. He took his story on the road. Within a month of my leaving, I started noticing the silence. I called Aunt Patty, my mother's cousin, the one who used to braid my hair at Thanksgiving. No answer. I called Marcus, my older cousin who taught me to ride a bike. Voicemail, every time. I sent a card to Nana for her birthday. No reply. It was Ray who finally told me what was happening. "Your father's been making calls," he said one night, wiping his hands with a shop rag. "Telling people your mother confessed on her deathbed, saying Marlene admitted you weren't his." I felt the floor tilt. "That's not true," I said. Ray's jaw clenched. "I know it's not." "Then why does everyone believe him?" "Because he's been saying it for years, and your mother's not here to say otherwise." That was the part that gutted me. Not that Gary lied. He'd been lying my whole life. It was that he weaponized my mother's death. Turned her last days into a confession she never made. Used her silence to rewrite history. And the family bought it. Because Gary was loud, and Gary was present, and Gary told the story first. If I stayed quiet, I lost everything. Not just a father. I'd already lost him. I'd lose my mother's name. Her reputation. The only proof she ever existed would be filtered through the mouth of the man who betrayed her. That was the real cost of silence. Not money, not inheritance. Marlene. But Gary made one mistake. He told that story to too many people, including someone who knew the truth. The call came 3 years after I left. I was 21, halfway through my nursing program, studying for a pharmacology exam at the kitchen table, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Dakota? It's Diane. Diane Mercer. I was your mother's best friend. I knew the name. I remembered a woman with red hair and a loud laugh who came to our house on Friday nights when I was little. She and my mother would sit on the porch with glasses of wine while my father watched football inside. I heard what your father's been telling people, Diane said. Her voice was tight, like she was holding something back with both hands. About your mother, about a deathbed confession. It's not true, I said. Sweetheart, I know it's not. I was at that hospital every single day. Your mother's last words were about you and Tyler. She never said anything about... Diane stopped, took a breath. Your mother was the most loyal woman I ever knew. Then she said something that rearranged every assumption I'd ever made. Your mother didn't have a secret, Dakota. But your father does. The kitchen went very quiet. What do you mean? When your mom was pregnant with you, she started suspecting Gary was seeing someone. She never had proof. But she told me, more than once, that he'd come home at strange hours, smelling like a perfume she didn't own. I sat back in my chair. The pharmacology textbook blurred. Diane, are you saying... I'm saying that if anyone had a reason to question anyone's loyalty, it wasn't him. She paused, then quieter. If you ever want the truth, science doesn't lie. You just need a sample. I thanked her, hung up, and sat in that kitchen for a very long time, staring at nothing. I waited a year before I acted. Not because I was hesitant, because I needed to be certain I was doing this for the right reason. I wasn't trying to win Gary back. I wasn't trying to prove I deserved his love. I was trying to protect my mother's name. That was the line I drew in my own mind, and I held it. The chance came at Thanksgiving. I was 22, final semester of nursing school. Tyler called me out of the blue, the first time in 4 years. Dad's going to the game at noon, he said. Come by, just for 30 minutes. I'll make coffee. I drove to the house in Ray's truck. The neighborhood looked the same. Same cracked sidewalk, same mailbox with the dented flag. Tyler met me at the back door. We sat at the kitchen table. He'd made instant coffee, too strong, in mismatched mugs. We talked about nothing. His job, my clinicals, the weather. Normal words over an abnormal silence. Then the front door opened. Gary stood in the hallway, keys in hand. He looked at me like I was a stain on his floor. What are you doing here? Tyler invited me. Tyler doesn't make decisions in my house. Tyler stood up. Dad, it's Thanksgiving. She's not family. Period. The sentence landed like a slap. Not new, not surprising, but hearing it at 22 felt different than hearing it at 10. At 10, it crushed me. At 22, it clarified me. I stood up, reached for my jacket, and on my way out, I picked up the coffee mug Gary had just set on the counter. Still warm. His fingerprints, his saliva, his DNA. I slipped it into my coat pocket and walked out the back door without looking back. Tyler followed me to the truck. I'm sorry, Dakota. I'm so sorry. I knew he meant it. I also knew he'd never do anything about it. 4 weeks later, the results came in a plain white envelope from the lab. I opened it at Ray's kitchen table on a Tuesday morning before my shift. The apartment was quiet. Ray was already at the shop. Outside, a garbage truck groaned down Kellner Road. I unfolded the letter. Read the numbers. Paternity index, 8,746,291 to 1. Probability of paternity, 99.998%. Gary Ashford is the biological father of Dakota Ashford. I set the paper down. I didn't move for 20 minutes. I'd expected it. Diane's story, my mother's character, the simple math of it. I'd known, somewhere deep, that this would be the answer. But knowing and seeing are two different animals. Knowing lives in your gut, seeing lives on paper, in black ink, with a reference number and a lab logo and a phone number you can call to verify. I cried then. Not the way you cry when you're sad, the way you cry when someone confirms that everything done to you was for nothing. 22 years of being called a stranger's child. 22 years of hand-me-downs and cold rooms and ask your real father. All of it. Every last cruelty, built on a lie that Gary needed to believe because the alternative was looking in the mirror. Ray came home at 6 and found me at the same table, eyes swollen, the letter smoothed flat in front of me. He read it, set it down, pulled out a chair. "I know, kid," he said. "I always knew." "Mom told you?" "Your mother told me she never once stepped outside that marriage. I believed her then. I believe her now." I put the results in an envelope, wrote Gary's name on the front, sealed it, mailed it the next morning. 2 weeks later, it came back. Stamped across the front in red, "Return to sender." He didn't even open it. I put the returned envelope in my nightstand drawer and closed it. I didn't chase him. I didn't call. I didn't beg. Instead, I built a life. I graduated nursing school that May, second in my class. Ray was in the front row, wearing a collared shirt I'd never seen before, clapping like I'd just won the Super Bowl. Nobody else from my family came. I got hired at St. Francis Community Hospital, pediatric ward. 12-hour shifts, rotating nights, more tired than I'd ever been, and more useful than I'd ever felt. I held newborns whose parents were too scared to hold them. I changed dressings on kids who didn't cry because they'd already learned that crying didn't help. I understood those kids. By 26, I'd saved enough for a down payment on a one-bedroom apartment on Linden Street. Nothing fancy. Popcorn ceilings, a radiator that clanked at midnight. But the lease had my name on it. Just mine. That was enough. Meanwhile, Gary stayed Gary. Tyler got married at 25. I wasn't invited. I found out through a Facebook post. Tyler in a rented tux, his bride Jenny smiling wide, Gary standing behind them with his arm around Tyler's shoulder, grinning like a man with no debts. No mention of me, no empty chair, no acknowledgement that the groom had a sister. I scrolled past it, closed my phone, went to work, but the family was starting to notice cracks. A few cousins had reached out to me over the years, tentative, careful. They'd seen my nursing license posted online. They knew I was doing fine without Gary's help, and that quiet success made his story harder to sell. Then, Gary announced his 60th birthday party. 80 guests, catered, a banner and a microphone. He had something planned. I could feel it from 30 miles away. 6 months before that party, my grandmother died. Nana Ashford, 82 years old. Congestive heart failure. She went in her sleep, which was the gentlest thing that ever happened in that family. I didn't go to the funeral. Gary made it clear through Tyler that my presence would cause a scene. I sat in my apartment that night and looked at a photo of Nana holding me as a baby, one of the only pictures I had from that house. In it, she's smiling, but her eyes look like they're carrying something heavier than an infant. 3 weeks later, I got a call from a lawyer's office downtown. Nana had left something for me. Not money, not property. An envelope, sealed, handwritten instructions on the outside, for Dakota only, to be delivered after my passing. I drove to the office on my lunch break. The lawyer, a gray-haired woman named Mrs. Pratt, handed me the envelope across a polished desk. "Your grandmother arranged this 8 months ago," she said. She was very specific about the recipient. The envelope was thick. The handwriting on the outside trembled, the pen strokes of a woman whose hands were failing but whose mind was not. I opened it in my car, in the parking garage, with the engine off. Inside was a letter. 3 pages, written in blue ink on lined paper, the kind you'd tear from a spiral notebook. Nana started with an apology. She told me she'd known the truth for almost 30 years. She'd caught Gary with a woman named Karen, in the back seat of his truck, parked behind the VFW hall, 6 months before I was born. Marlene was 7 months pregnant. Gary begged his mother to stay quiet. Nana did. Because he was her son, and she was afraid of losing him. She chose her son over the truth, and she spent the rest of her life living with what that cost. I read the letter 3 times in that parking garage. The second page named dates, places, details no one could fabricate. The VFW hall on Route 9, a Tuesday night in October. Karen worked at the county clerk's office. That's how Gary met her. Nana described the perfume she smelled on Gary's jacket the night she confronted him. Vanilla and something floral, cheap, not Marlene's. The third page was the part that broke me open. Dakota, you were always my granddaughter. You were always Gary's child. Your mother never betrayed anyone. Your father did. And I helped him hide it by staying silent. I am sorry. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But you deserve the truth. Nana had signed it, dated it, and at the bottom, a notary stamp. Mrs. Pratt had witnessed the signature in her office. I called Diane that evening. Nana wrote me a letter, I said. She knew about Karen. Silence. Then, she told you. You knew Nana knew? Marlene suspected. She told me once. She thought Nana had seen something but was too scared of Gary to say it. Diane's voice cracked. Your mother carried that alone, Dakota. She never had proof, just instinct. I sat on my couch with the letter in my lap. The DNA results from my nightstand beside it, and for the first time, I saw the full picture. Gary didn't hate me because I wasn't his. He hated me because I was. And every time he looked at me, he saw Marlene. And every time he saw Marlene, he remembered what he'd done. I wasn't the evidence of her sin. I was the evidence of his. I put both documents into a new envelope, sealed it, set it in my drawer. I wasn't going to find Gary, but if he ever came for me again, I'd be ready. I didn't have to wait long. 3 weeks later, Tyler called. It was a Wednesday night. I was folding scrubs on my bed when my phone lit up with his name, a name I hadn't seen on that screen in over a year. Hey, he said. His voice was low, the way people talk when they're standing in a room with someone who might hear. Hey, Dad's turning 60. There's a party, Saturday the 14th, 80 people. He doesn't want me there, Tyler. I want you there. A pause. You're my sister. Something in my chest seized. In 27 years, Tyler had never said those words out loud, not once. Not in the kitchen when Gary made his remarks, not at the birthday with the $50 bill, not in any of the silence that followed. Why now? I asked. Because Jenny's pregnant. His voice shook slightly. And I've been thinking about what kind of family I want this kid to grow up in. And it's not what we had. I closed my eyes. Tyler, if I show up, it won't go well. I know, but I'm asking anyway. I thought about it for 3 days, talked to Ray. He listened without interrupting, the way he always does, leaning against the counter, arms crossed, eyes steady. What do you want to do? He asked. I want to go. For Tyler. For Mom. Then go. Will you come? I'll be outside, in the truck, in case you need to leave fast. That was Ray. No speeches, no drama, just a truck with the engine running and a man who'd never once let me down. Saturday morning I got dressed. White blouse, simple earrings, flats. I picked up the envelope from my drawer and slipped it into my bag, just in case. The party was in full swing when I pulled up. Gary's house, the house I grew up in, sat on a quarter-acre lot at the end of Maple Drive. The lawn had been mowed for the occasion. String lights zigzagged between the garage and the fence posts. A folding table by the gate held a cooler, stacks of paper plates, and a sheet cake with "Happy 60th, Gary," piped in blue frosting. I could hear country music from the Bluetooth speaker on the porch, voices layered over each other, the comfortable noise of people who belong somewhere. I parked on the street, checked my bag. The envelope was there, tucked between my wallet and a pack of tissues. Ray's truck was parked 2 houses down, engine off, windows cracked. He caught my eye in the side mirror and gave me a single nod. I walked through the gate. The backyard was full. 80 people, give or take. Aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors, guys from Gary's plumbing crew, women from the church. Kids ran between legs. Someone was grilling burgers. The air smelled like charcoal and cheap beer and cut grass. A few heads turned when I walked in. Conversations stuttered. An aunt whose name I'd forgotten leaned toward the woman beside her and whispered something behind her hand. Tyler met me at the gate. He looked like he hadn't slept. You came, he said. I came. He led me to a chair at the far end of the last table, the one closest to the back fence, farthest from the main gathering. I sat down, set my bag on my lap. Then I looked up and found Gary's eyes across the yard. He was standing at the head table, beer in hand, surrounded by friends. His smile disappeared the second he saw me. And I understood, right then, that this was never going to be a quiet evening. For the first hour, Gary pretended I wasn't there. He worked the crowd the way he always did. Handshake, backslap, laugh, repeat. He was good at this. He'd spent 60 years learning how to fill a room with a version of himself that people wanted to believe in. The hard-working plumber, the devoted father, the man who sacrificed everything for his family. It was a convincing performance. It always had been. Around 7 o'clock, someone clinked a glass. The music faded. Gary walked to the center of the yard where a microphone stand had been set up next to the cake table. He tapped the mic twice. The crowd gathered in a loose semicircle. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," he said. 60 years. Can't believe it. Laughter. Applause. He talked about his life, his work, how he'd built his crew from nothing, how he'd raised his family in this very house, on this very lawn. He gestured around the yard, and people nodded. Then he called Tyler up. Tyler walked to the microphone slowly, hands in his pockets. Gary put his arm around him and pulled him close. "This is my boy," Gary said into the mic. "My only boy. My legacy." He said it with the warmth of a father and the precision of a surgeon. My only boy, not my oldest, not one of my kids. My only. A few guests glanced in my direction. I kept my face still. "Some of you know," Gary continued, and his voice shifted, lower, more deliberate. "My first wife made choices I had to live with for 18 years. He paused, let it land. "I won't go into detail, but tonight, I want to make something official." He looked out at the crowd with the calm authority of a man who believed he'd already won. "This house," Gary said, one hand on Tyler's shoulder, the other gripping the mic. "Everything I built, it goes to Tyler, because family means blood. Real blood." Applause. Scattered, uncertain, but enough. A few of the plumbing crew guys whooped. A neighbor clapped too hard. Then Marcus, my cousin, standing near the cooler, said what no one else would. "What about Dakota?" It came out quiet, but the microphone caught the silence after it. Gary heard. His head turned slowly toward Marcus, then toward me. He smiled. The kind of smile that isn't a smile at all. "Dakota?" He chuckled into the mic. "She's here as a guest tonight, not as my daughter." The yard went still. Someone set down a plate. A child's voice carried from somewhere near the house, unaware. But Gary wasn't finished. He looked directly at me. Across 80 people. Across 29 years. And he said the thing he'd been rehearsing his whole life. "I kept my mouth shut for years, out of respect for her mother's memory." His voice was steady, practiced. "But since she decided to show up tonight, everyone deserves the truth. She was never mine." I felt every pair of eyes in that yard land on me. Diane Mercer, sitting at the next table, reached over and put her hand on my shoulder. Her fingers pressed hard. A message. "I'm here." I sat perfectly still. My hands were under the table, gripping the strap of my bag. My heart hammered so loud, I was sure the woman next to me could hear it, but my face didn't move. Because I'd been waiting for this, not hoping for it, not planning it, but prepared, the way you prepare for a storm when you've watched the sky turn dark for 29 years. Gary smiled at the crowd, triumphant. He had no idea what was in my bag. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped against the patio stone, a small sound that cut through the silence like a blade. Every head turned. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't rush. I spoke the way I speak to a parent at the hospital when I'm delivering results they didn't expect. Clear, measured, respectful. "Gary, you've spent 29 years telling that story." I paused. Let the sentence breathe. "Can I have 60 seconds to tell mine?" His smile faltered, just slightly, a crack in the plaster. He shrugged, gestured with the beer bottle. "Go ahead. Won't change the facts." "Thank you." I opened my bag, pulled out the envelope. It was thick, cream-colored, worn at the edges from years in a drawer. Gary's name was written across the front in my handwriting, the same handwriting from 7 years ago, the same envelope he'd mailed back without opening. I held it up so the people near the front could see. "Some of you might not know this," I said, "but 7 years ago I mailed this envelope to Gary. He sent it back, unopened, Return to sender. I turned it so the red stamp was visible. He didn't want to know what was inside. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Gary's jaw tightened. "What is that?" he said. "This is what you were too afraid to open." I broke the seal. The paper tore cleanly. Inside were 2 documents folded together. I separated them, held the first one up. My hands were steady. My voice was steady. My whole body was a straight line drawn through 29 years of being told I didn't count. "I'm going to read 1 paragraph," I said. "And then I'm going to leave. And you can decide for yourselves what's true." 80 people held their breath. I unfolded the DNA results and read them out loud. Paternity test conducted by Midstate Genomics Laboratory, dated March 14, 2019. Sample A, cheek swab, Dakota Ashford. Sample B, saliva trace, Gary Ashford. I looked up. Gary's face was locked. The beer bottle in his hand had stopped halfway to his mouth. Paternity index, 8,746,291 to 1. Combined probability of paternity, 99.998%. I lowered the paper. Gary Ashford is the biological father of Dakota Ashford. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, packed tight with the sound of 80 people recalculating everything they'd been told for the last 3 decades. Somewhere near the back, a spoon hit a plate. Someone inhaled sharply. A woman I didn't know covered her mouth with her hand. Gary spoke first. Of course he did. "That's fake." His voice was flat, controlled, but the color was draining from his face like water from a tub. "She fabricated it." I held the paper toward Marcus, who was standing closest. "Lab name, phone number, and case reference number are printed at the bottom. Call them right now if you want." Marcus took the paper, read it slowly, looked up at Gary. "It's from Midstate, Gary. It's legit. I don't care where it's from. The reference number is right here. Anyone with a phone can verify it in 5 minutes." Gary's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "This doesn't prove anything," he said. But his voice had changed. The command was gone. What was left sounded thin, hollow, like a man standing on a floor that had just started to crack. I didn't argue with him. I didn't need to. The paper was doing the work. I reached into the envelope for the second document. "The DNA is only half of it," I said. I unfolded the second document. 3 pages of lined paper covered in shaky blue handwriting. The crowd leaned in, the way people do when they sense the ground is about to shift again. "This is a letter," I said. "Written by Nana, your mother, Gary. Written 3 months before she died. Notarized by her attorney." Something crossed Gary's face. Not anger. Something older. Fear. "My mother wouldn't—" "She did." I didn't read the whole letter. That wasn't mine to share. I read 2 sentences. The only 2 that mattered. "I caught Gary with a woman named Karen behind the VFW hall in October, 6 months before Dakota was born. Marlene never cheated. My son did, and I stayed silent because I was a coward." The yard erupted. Not in noise, in motion. People shifted in their chairs. Hands went to mouths. Eyes darted between Gary and me like spectators at a wreck they couldn't look away from. Gary grabbed the edge of the table. His knuckles were white. "She was confused," he said. "She was old. She was sick." Diane Mercer stood up from her chair. Slowly. Deliberately. Every person in that yard watched her rise. "She wasn't confused, Gary." Diane's voice was clear and unshaking. "I was there too. Marlene cried on my couch for 3 hours the night she found out about Karen. She never once thought about leaving you. But you never stopped punishing her for what you did." The microphone was still on. Every word carried. Tyler, who had been standing beside Gary this whole time, took 1 step back. Then another. His face was white. His mouth was a thin line. He hadn't known. About any of it. What happened next was the saddest part. Not because I felt sorry for Gary, because I watched a man try to save a lie that had already died, and he couldn't stop himself. "This is my birthday!" Gary shouted. His hand slammed the table. Paper plates jumped. A cup of soda tipped over, and nobody picked it up. "You planned this. You came here to destroy—" "I came because Tyler asked me to. She's trying to get the house. She's been scheming." I don't want your house, Gary. My voice was level. I made sure of that. I have my own home. I pay my own rent. I don't need anything from you. He looked around the yard, searching for an ally, for someone to nod, to step forward, to say she's lying, but every face he found was either looking away or looking through him. Marcus set the DNA paper on the table, folded his arms. Aunt Patty was crying, quietly, into a napkin. A man from Gary's plumbing crew, I didn't know his name, put down his plate and walked toward the gate without a word. Then Tyler spoke. "Dad," his voice cracked. "Is it true? About Karen?" The whole yard held still. Gary looked at his son, his golden child, the one he'd built his entire identity around. And for one moment, I thought he might tell the truth. I thought 30 years of lies might finally collapse under their own weight. But Gary just stood there, jaw working, eyes wet, saying nothing. And that silence, that refusal to deny it when it mattered most, was louder than any confession. Tyler's hand dropped from his father's shoulder. "That's what I thought," Tyler whispered. Gary was still standing, but everything underneath him had already fallen. I could have stopped there. The DNA was red. The letter was out. The silence had spoken. But Gary had asked one question for 29 years, and I decided, standing in that yard with 80 witnesses and a fold of paper in my hand, that he deserved an answer. "You always wanted to know who my real father is," I said. Gary's eyes snapped to mine. "He's standing right outside." I pointed toward the front of the house. Through the side gate, past the driveway, you could see the street. And there, parked under the elm tree, was Ray's blue Ford pickup. And there, leaning against the driver's side door with his arms crossed, was Uncle Ray. He wasn't trying to make an entrance. He was just there, steady, the way he'd been for 11 years. Gary moved to the edge of the yard and looked through the gate. When he saw Ray, something drained from his face, the last trace of color, the last thread of authority. He looked like a man watching his own house burn from across the street. "Ray taught me to drive," I said. "Ray paid for nursing school. Ray showed up every Christmas you didn't." I folded the documents, placed them on the table in front of Gary's empty chair. "DNA says you're my father, but Ray is my dad." The envelope sat on the table between a paper plate and an untouched slice of cake. "Keep these," I said. "This time, try opening them." I picked up my bag, smoothed my blouse, and walked toward the gate. Behind me I heard a chair scrape, then another. Aunt Patty's footsteps followed mine. Diane was already at the gate, holding it open. Marcus nodded as I passed. Didn't say anything. Didn't have to. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I just walked. Out of that yard, down the driveway, into the rest of my life. Ray opened the passenger door before I reached the truck. I climbed in. He closed it behind me. Walked around to the driver's side. Got in. Started the engine. Neither of us spoke for 2 blocks. The street was quiet. Porch lights clicked on as the evening darkened. A sprinkler hissed somewhere on a lawn we'd already passed. "You okay?" Ray said, eyes on the road. "I'm done," I said. "Finally, I'm done." He nodded, reached over and turned on the radio. Low. Some country station playing a song I didn't know. Pedal steel and a quiet voice singing about a long way home. And then I cried. Not the way I cried in Ray's kitchen at 22, when the DNA results first came back. That was grief. This was different. This was the sound of something heavy being set down after carrying it so long your arms forgot what empty felt like. I cried for my mother, who never got to defend herself. For Nana, who tried to make it right too late. For the 10-year-old girl on the stairs who heard her father call her no one. For the 18-year-old who baked her own birthday cake and got a $50 bill thrown in her face. I cried for all of them. And then I stopped. Ray didn't ask me to explain. Didn't offer wisdom or a pep talk. He just drove, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the console between us, close enough to reach if I needed it. When we pulled into the parking lot behind his shop, he killed the engine and sat for a moment. "You said what needed to be said," he told me. "That's enough." I wiped my face with the back of my hand, looked at the staircase leading up to the apartment where I'd rebuilt my life. "Yeah," I said. "It is." The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote an email. Not to Gary, to Mrs. Pratt, the attorney who'd handled Nana's letter. I kept it short. 3 paragraphs. Professional. I stated that I had no interest in Gary's property, his savings, or any form of inheritance. I was not filing a lawsuit. I was not pursuing any legal claim. I wanted exactly one thing: that Gary stop repeating the story that Marlene Ashford confessed to infidelity. Because there was now documented evidence, a DNA test, and a notarized letter from his own mother, proving that story was false. If the story continued to circulate, I reserved the right to share both documents more broadly. This was not a threat. It was a boundary. Mrs. Pratt forwarded the email to Gary's contact on file. I never received a response. That same week, I mailed photocopies of the DNA results to every family member whose address I had. 12 envelopes total. Each one included a brief note on a single index card. I am not asking anyone to choose a side. I am only asking that you know the truth. My mother, Marlene Ashford, was faithful. The enclosed documents confirm this. If you have questions, the lab's number is on the letterhead. I signed each card with my name. No anger, no pleading, just fact. Then I blocked Gary's phone number. Not because I hated him, because I was finished having a conversation that only went one direction. Ray watched me seal the last envelope from across the kitchen. "That's it?" he asked. "That's it. No court? No lawyers? I don't need a judge to tell me who I am." He almost smiled. Almost. "Your mother would have said the same thing." That was the best compliment anyone had ever given me. Tyler called 1 week later. It was late, almost 11. I was on the couch in my apartment, half watching a baking show on mute, when his name lit up my screen. "Hey. Hey." His voice sounded hollowed out, like someone had taken a melon baller to everything behind his words. "Did you know?" he asked. "About Karen, before Nana's letter?" "No, not until the letter." A long breath. "I've been looking stuff up. I called the lab. The DNA is real." "I know." "He won't talk to me. He's been locked in his room since the party. Won't answer the phone. Won't come to the shop." I didn't say I'm sorry, because I wasn't sure what I'd be apologizing for. "The party ended right after you left," Tyler continued. "Half the guests walked out within 10 minutes. Dad sat at the head table by himself until it got dark. I had to go out and bring the food inside. He didn't move." I pictured it. Gary alone at a decorated table, surrounded by empty chairs and string lights buzzing in the dark. I waited for satisfaction to arrive. It didn't. Just a dull ache in a place I thought had scarred over. "Tyler, you don't have to choose between us." "I know. But I'm done pretending." "I know that too." There was a pause. Then Tyler's voice shifted, softer, almost shy. "Jenny's due in 4 months. It's a girl." My hand tightened on the phone. "Jenny told me something last week," he said. "She said, 'If you ever treat our daughter the way your father treated Dakota, I will walk out that door and never come back.'" He was crying now, quietly, the way men cry when they've only just learned how. "I want her to know her aunt, Dakota." "She will," I said. "I promise." The fallout didn't come in a wave. It came like leaks, slow, steady, impossible to plug. Within 2 weeks of the party, 3 men from Gary's plumbing crew quit. All 3 had known Marlene. One of them, a guy named Dennis who'd been with Gary for 11 years, told Tyler on his way out, "I can't work for a man who'd do that to his own kid." Gary's crew went from 6 to 3 overnight. He lost a commercial contract with a property management company because he couldn't staff the job. Money didn't dry up, but it shrank. And in a small town, when your crew walks out, people notice. The church noticed too. Gary had been a deacon at Grace Hill Community for 15 years. Not a role that pays, a role that matters. It meant he read scripture on Sundays, organized the food drive in November, shook hands in the lobby. Pastor Collins called Gary in for a private meeting. I don't know what was said. But the following Sunday, Gary's name was missing from the bulletin. A woman named Linda read the scripture instead. Neighbors adjusted. The Hendersons, Barb and Tom, both in their 70s, who'd lived next door since before I was born, brought a tin of cookies to Ray's shop one afternoon. "For Dakota," Barb said, pressing the tin into Ray's hands. "Marlene was the kindest woman on this street. We should have said something sooner." Ray put the cookies on the kitchen table that night. I ate 3 and cried a little, because sometimes kindness hits harder than cruelty. Marcus posted something short on Facebook. Truth has a way of finding daylight. He didn't tag anyone, he didn't have to. The comment section filled up within an hour. Gary didn't leave his house for 2 weeks. A month after the party, a letter arrived at Ray's shop. Hand-delivered by Tyler, not mailed. My name was on the front in Gary's handwriting, blocky, all caps, the penmanship of a man who writes work orders, not apologies. I opened it at the counter while Ray rebuilt a carburetor 3 feet away, pretending not to watch. The letter was short, 6 sentences. "Dakota, I know things got out of hand. I made mistakes. The house is still your home if you want it. Come back so we can talk. Dad." I read it twice, looking for the word, the only word that would have mattered. It wasn't there. No sorry, no I was wrong, no acknowledgement of what he'd done, not the lie, not Karen, not the 18 years of erasure, not the $50 bill, not the speech in front of 80 people, just mistakes, passive, unnamed, floating in the air like smoke from someone else's fire. And come home, as if I'd been the one who left, as if the door was always open and I simply chose not to walk through it, as if the problem was geography and not 30 years of cruelty. I folded the letter, put it in the drawer next to the returned envelope, closed the drawer. Ray looked up from the carburetor. "You okay with that?" "I will be." That same week, Tyler came to visit me, first time ever at my apartment. He brought an ultrasound photo, a grainy black and white image of a baby girl curled like a comma. He stood in my kitchen, awkward and too tall for the space, and held it out. "We're naming her Marlene," he said. I took the photo, held it with both hands. "Does Gary know?" "Yeah." "What did he say?" "Nothing. He didn't say anything at all." Some silences are confessions. That one was. 3 months passed. The sharpest edges softened. Not into forgiveness, but into distance. And distance, I've learned, is its own kind of mercy. I kept working at St. Francis. Morning shifts, mostly. The pediatric ward is the kind of place that resets your perspective every 12 hours. You hold a 3-day-old baby who just had heart surgery, and suddenly your own problems feel survivable. One morning, a newborn wrapped her entire fist around my index finger and wouldn't let go. I stood there, beside the incubator, for 5 minutes. Just breathing. Just being held by something that small. After my shift, I drove to Ray's shop, the way I did most afternoons. We ate lunch at his workbench, turkey sandwiches, Lay's chips, 2 cans of ginger ale, surrounded by engine parts and the smell of WD-40. "Your birthday's next month," Ray said, wiping mustard off his thumb. 30, the big one. What do you want to do?" I thought about it. "Bake a cake," I said. "A real one. Invite Tyler and Jenny. Invite Diane. Invite Patty and Marcus. Blow out the candles. Actually blow them out this time." Ray smiled. "A real one. The kind that crinkled the skin around his eyes and made him look 10 years younger." "Finally get to do it right," he said. "Yeah, finally." I looked up at the wall behind the kitchen table. The $50 bill was there, framed in a cheap black frame from the dollar store. I'd hung it the week I moved in, not out of bitterness, out of memory. That bill was the price Gary put on me. $50 for 29 years of a daughter he refused to claim. I was worth more than that. I'd always been worth more than that. I just needed a while to believe it. If you're listening to this story and you have a Gary in your life, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I don't know your situation. I don't know what you've survived or what you're surviving right now. I don't know if your Gary is your father, your mother, a sibling, a spouse, or someone else who decided you weren't enough and spent years making sure you believed it. But I know this. You don't owe loyalty to someone just because you share DNA. Blood doesn't earn trust. Behavior does. And the people who love you, really love you, are the ones who show up without being begged, without conditions, without keeping score. My mother couldn't protect me anymore. She ran out of time. Nana knew the truth for 3 decades but was too afraid to speak. Tyler loved me but didn't have the courage to stand up until the walls were already falling down. Uncle Ray had no obligation. None. I wasn't his daughter by law, by blood, by any document you could file. He was just a man with a spare room and a decision. Show up or don't. He showed up every single day. When I couldn't sleep, when I failed my first clinical exam, when I sat in his kitchen at 22, crying over a DNA result that confirmed what he already knew. He never said, "I'm your father now." He didn't have to. He just was. I didn't win because of a piece of paper. I won because I stopped letting one man's lie define my worth. The DNA didn't set me free. Deciding I was done, that set me free. Setting a boundary isn't revenge. It's the first time you choose yourself. If nobody's told you that today, I'm telling you now. So here's where things stand. I'm 29, about to turn 30. I still work the pediatric ward at St. Francis. I still eat lunch at Ray's workbench on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He still makes the sandwiches too thick. And I still don't complain. Tyler calls me every Sunday. It's the first real relationship we've ever had, not built on a shared house or a shared father, but on the simple choice to pick up the phone. Jenny sends me photos of her growing belly. The nursery is painted soft yellow. There's a name stenciled on the wall in white cursive letters. Marlene. Baby Marlene was born 2 months ago, 7 pounds, 4 ounces, at 3:47 in the morning. I was in the waiting room. Tyler came through the double doors, scrubs wrinkled, eyes red, grinning so wide it looked like his face might split. "You want to hold her?" I held my niece. She had dark hair like mine, like our mother's. Diane and Patty were at the hospital too. Diane brought flowers. Patty brought the blanket she'd crocheted in secret. We stood around Jenny's bed and passed that baby from arm to arm, and for a few minutes, we were the kind of family Marlene would have wanted. Gary? I don't know. I don't ask. Tyler doesn't bring it up, and I don't push. I heard through Marcus that he's still in the house on Maple Drive. Alone. Not broke, just empty. The $50 bill is still framed on my wall. I see it every morning when I make coffee. It reminds me where I started. It reminds me what someone thought I was worth. It reminds me they were wrong. My name is Dakota Ashford. I am my father's daughter, just not the father who threw me out. If Dakota's story reminded you of someone, or of yourself, drop a comment and tell me, what boundary did you finally set? I read every single one. If you want more stories like this, check the links in the description. There's a whole playlist waiting for you. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for being here, truly. I'll see you in the next story.